This is Martin Smith for the Bass Sessions. Today I'm talking to Jonn Penny from Ned's Atomic Dustbin about their DVD launch gig in December in Wolverhampton. He's got some exclusive news for us about the lineup for the show. Jonn, great to talk to you. Thanks for coming in to have a chat with us. And we've already sort of announced that the Neds are doing a one-off DVD launch gig in Wolverhampton, and that's at the Civic Hall on December the 1st. But you've got some exclusive news for us about the lineup, the other bands, and some other surprises on the night. So if you can, please tell us all about that.
Yeah, we decided to re-release our Nothing Is Cool video, which I guess on VHS is now worn out for everybody. It came out in '91, and I guess it was released at our height when the band were as popular as we ever were. We thought we'd bring it out on DVD at long last. Lots of people on social networking sites and stuff had said, you know, why isn't this available on DVD? So we decided to do that. It's kind of an excuse for a gig. We like to have an excuse for a gig. But we also thought, let's make a real night of it, you know, let's make it a really special night. So we've assembled some excellent special guests for the evening. First off, we've got Mr. Steve Lamacq, doing special guest DJing for us on the evening. The main support band are Cud, who were indie heroes of the time, and shortly after we'd nailed down Cud and Steve Lamacq, it just happened that news was on the grapevine, and a band called the Frank and Walters got in touch and said, any chance we can jump on the bill, because we're in the country at the time. They're Irish lads. And we said, yeah, well, by all means, you know. So we're making a real 90s indie party of it that night. And I mean, also people, if they buy tickets, they can get in free for Blast Off nightclub after till about 3 in the morning. And
then you're also going to be showing the DVD in its entirety as well at some point. How's that going to work, John?
Well, what we're going to do, we're going to play the set list, if you like, of the DVD. So we're going to play the songs that we played on the DVD in that order. Then at which point we'll go off and have a quick swig, come back on and play the rest of the hits that people want to hear. And when the gig's finished, the video, DVD, the film itself will be played in the Civic Bar in its entirety for anyone who fancies a bit of extra nostalgia and fancies cooling down and watching a bit of a film while they're at it.
And as you say, the DVD was filmed certainly when the band were in perhaps what you might call that phase where they were at the peak of their powers. Would you agree with that? So what for people who perhaps weren't around at the time, some people who aren't of that era, what is the DVD about? How is it put together, and what would people see?
Well, basically, what happened was just at the time when we signed to Sony Music, and it looked like we may be sort of getting somewhere with our career. We started getting some Super 8 cameras out, and we took a few enthusiastic film type people on the road with us around a lot of Europe and around the UK. And it was all at a kind of a time when things were really starting to happen for us in this country, but they were still kind of really on a very small scale in Europe. So we got quite a bit of contrast, I guess, between the size of the gigs we were doing. You kind of got a contrast in the sort of emotions that were going on in the band, because you kind of, on one side you're thinking, you know, blimey, we're going enormous, and on the other side you're landing right back on terra firma, because you're playing the tiniest club that you could possibly play in the back end of Paris, you know. So we got a lot of backstage footage, a lot of footage with the fans, a lot of kind of tourist footage, us just kind of looking around these countries we've never been to before, trying to make jokes, failing abysmally. And then also we've got a load of live stuff. And of course the crux of the issue, I guess, with playing the Civic Hall this time, is that the majority of the live footage on Nothing Is Cool was filmed at the Civic Hall. So that's why we're playing the Civic Hall as opposed to the Wolverhampton, kind of a smaller gig. We kind of sold the Wolverhampton out last time we played in Wolverhampton, and we wanted to ring the changes and get back to the Civic again. So that's the reasoning behind that. But there are also stories that kind of knock around in the background, and the Steve Lamacq story being the prime candidate for that.
That particular show, I was lucky enough to be there on that particular night, was perhaps Certainly a very memorable night for various reasons, wasn't it? Steve certainly was included in that.
Well, yeah.
What would that be then, John?
Well, I'll tell you a story. It was one of those. It was one of those nights in December when it was absolutely howling down with rain when the crowd got into the gig. Most of them were filmed on the way in, and they appear in the Nothing Is Cool film. But it was chucking down with rain. But by the time the gig was over and everyone stepped outside, we'd had 2 foot of snow. And the majority of the audience got trapped in Wolverhampton that night. And it just so happened that on that night, a young, jobbing enemy reviewer called Steve Lamack had wound his way up to Wolverhampton on the train. I think with nowhere to stay for the night. I certainly don't think he was funded for a room or anything, to review the gig, and because he liked the band. He got trapped in Wolverhampton. I don't think he'd ever been to Wolverhampton before. I think it was a bit of an experience for him. But he will tell you that he had a bit of an experience because basically he was kept in fags and booze for 2 days by all the Neds fans who were also stuck in Wolverhampton. So I think fond memories for Mr. Steve Lamack. And look at him now, you know.
He's done all right, I suppose. And of course, the Wolverhampton shows were the Civic Hall shows around the sort of that time of the year became something of a thing, didn't they? There were lots of them. What sort of special memories do you have of playing? Not quite a hometown show, but certainly in the area. What sort of special memories do you have as one of the band in terms of how good it was to come back and finish off the year perhaps at the Civic?
Well, the amazing thing about us doing the Wolverhampton shows at the end of the year, I guess to start with, was that we never kind of imagined that it would become our kind of spiritual home, Wolverhampton. It's not somewhere that we'd really been as a band before we played there. You know, we played, our biggest ever headline gig at the time was the Wolverhampton Hall, and we had a real shock. When we played to the Wolverhampton crowd, we kind of realised that was coming home, and we'd never kind of seen it that way before. But as things developed and as the band got bigger, and we kind of liked to finish off our touring year at the Civic Hall, what happened was the gig got a reputation amongst our fans, and it kind of meant that people would fly in from all the places we'd been through the year to be a part of the end of year atmosphere. So we would get people from Japan, from Australia, America, Canada, Scandinavia, all across Europe, all flying into Wolverhampton for our end of year hometown gig, just to kind of sample the Wolverhampton atmosphere.
Do you think in a way, and this is something that I think is part of the story that's told in the DVD, that's a consequence of the fact that as a band, the Neds were always very close to their fans. There wasn't much of a gap in terms of we're the band and you're the fans there. Do you think that sort of atmosphere is a reflection of that?
I think absolutely. I guess the thing at the time was that very much what we were into was not so much necessarily wanting to be at one with our fans, with the people who were into our music, but the fact that we were kind of the same age as them anyway, you know. We'd got no airs and graces about us. Living in the Black Country doesn't allow you to have these airs and graces anyway. But I think we were of the same age, we were of the same mind as our crowd. They kind of grew up with us. We never lofted ourselves above them purposely in any way. And I guess that also at the time was a bit of a vibe of that kind of band going around. You know, there were other bands who were of a similar kind of mentality. People like Mega City 4, I guess, and people like the Census Things. I guess musically we would be lumped in with these kind of bands. But it wasn't a musical thing. I think it was more to do with the culture of the kind of fans that they attracted.
So, in a way, recreating some of that vibe, perhaps with Cud, Frank and Walters, and of course Steve Lamack as well will be DJing on the night on December, could, for those of us of a certain age, perhaps bring back a lot of memories of a happy time in their own development as people.
Well, yeah, and I guess the thing about the film is, I kind of scratched my head a bit the first few times I saw people saying, well, why can't I get Nothing Is Cool on DVD, you know? Because I'm kind of thinking, well, that's a long time ago. But I guess what it is for them as much as it was for us, is a snapshot of the kind of heyday of their kind of musical interest, if you like. Mm-hmm. Much as it was our height, for the real hardcore fans of the band, it was their height too. For them, I guess, at that time in their lives, music was the most important thing that was going on for them as well as for us. And so I guess that kind of snapshot of how it was at that point is it's something that we all kind of do with photos, don't we? You know, and I guess we do it with old bits of film here and there. But this is a kind of a really well documented snap of our lives, I guess.
And of course, a chance for people who weren't around at the time, or maybe people who want to come and see a little bit about what it was like back then. Good opportunity to see it for themselves.
Yeah, the next generation, you know, they can see how many good chins we've grown and see how many pounds we've put on. see whether we can gain the same amount of vertical achievement when we jump in the air, and see how many pounds of sweat we push out when we try and recreate the same atmosphere.
Absolutely. So that's Wolverhampton Civic Hall, December the 1st, and it'll be Steve Lamack, Frank and Walters, Cud, Ned's Atomic Dustbin, and then Nothing Is Cool, the DVD in its entirety.
Absolutely.
Anybody wants any more information? What's the website, John?
We're nedsatomicdustbin.com.
That's great. Okay, so that's Ned's Atomic Dustbin live at the Civic Hall in Wolverhampton on December the 1st. I'd like to say thanks very much to Jonn for joining us today, and this is Martin Smith for the Bass Sessions.